My name is Caitlin Knopf. I'm the CEO and co-founder of Pequity, as well as a compensation manager from companies such as Google, Cruise Automation, Instacart. And I'm continuing our series on comp education to help demystify and make it a bit easier for anyone who wants to learn. And today is probably our most technical presentation about how to turn market data into salary ranges. So a lot of slides, but I hope it'll be helpful in developing your pay programs. So before we dive in, I would like to remind you that to create ranges, you do need good market data. We have a video on this on how to identify good data. You also need to understand your current pay practices in Comp Health. There's a video on how to assess that. After you've done this assessment, you need to develop a pay philosophy. We also have a video for that. And then you're going to choose a target based on what you've assessed and create a range around it. So what I mean by that is you're going to choose a target based on the comparison you did previously of your candidates and employees. If you saw that all of your employees were paid at the 50th percentile, you're going to say, okay, do I want to continue to pay at the 50th percentile, or am I looking to level up and I want to pay at the 75th? You may say I'm paying at the 75th percentile and that is too high. I actually think that I don't need to pay that for this talent, and you'll level down. Once you've made that decision, this is where you're going to start your range creation. See, what I want you to do is you're going to pull out a spreadsheet or doc and create a list of all your job, families, or roles at your company and put the levels alongside them. This might mean that you have software engineering as an example, and maybe levels 1 to 9 or levels 1 to 6 for individual contributor and 1 to 6 for manager. That's the typical format in a survey. And then you are going to use that to put in your percentile data. Now, you may say, Caitlin, I don't know if I have job families. Usually, if you have departments, that's a really good indicator. You can split by department, or you can start with tech and non-tech and then drill into the roles from there. That's where I see a lot of smaller companies start. They have tech, non-tech, and usually an ops or other, or sales is a good one too. But whatever system you get to, you do need to start creating these job families because that is how you're going to match your benchmarks in. It's also how you're going to build a consistent program going forward. Next, after you've chosen your target percentile, you're going to have to clean up that data. Now, Pequity has an algorithm and system as well as partners who can help you with that. All you're going to be doing is filling in the missing values and making sure the jump between different levels is logical or can handle a typical promotion. You also need to make sure that you add a little bit of an aging factor to take in the inflation that's going to occur over the next 12 months. Typically, you look at the inflation from the past 12 months and use that as your model. Up to you. I know inflation this year of 2022 has been insane, so that might not be the best way to do it. But you do want to age it slightly because if you don't, those ranges could become obsolete very quickly. And typically, your finance team is only going to want you to budget and redo your ranges once to twice a year. After you've done that, you're going to take that cleaned up percentile data that you've modified slightly, and you're going to add a percentage up and down from that target. Now, it will vary based on comp element. Bonus, for instance, you probably will not add a percentage up and down. It's usually presented as a bonus target. So you might say that's a 15% bonus target. You're not going to do a 5 to 20. But for salary, you probably will have a range that is a 10 to 20% width. For equity, you might have something that is closer to 20 to 30. I usually do a 15 to 20%, and that seems to be the industry standard for salary, but you should consider what makes sense for the talent yet again, and what strategy you have for promotions and how quickly people will be moving up in role, as well as how often they'll be getting merit increases. Once you have that table constructed, it should look something like this. I tried to put an example of a table that I have used in the past. You can see that I have my job family with software engineering. I do put typical title to help me guide myself along this journey. I put the levels. This is a 4-level system, and I chose the percentiles. You will notice that I have different target percentiles for equity and salary and total comp. I also have different percentiles by role. So there are times where you will split it like I did here. My principal is at the 90th percentile for salary because that is a very difficult role to hire in the market. And for the other ones, I'm targeting the 50th and 75th. You can even do this across job families. In that non-tech tech world, you might target tech at the 75th, those roles tend to be more competitive in the market. So you might have to shoot a little bit ahead of the market data to get the talent you want. Whereas for a role where there is more supply and less demand, a good example might be recruiting, it could be admins. That is where you might shoot closer to the 50th percentile because there is not that economic force that's pushing you to have to pay above the market rate, which is typically the 50th percentile. Now, once you have this table constructed, you're probably like, okay, it's great. I found my target. I have a basic range, but there are ways you can get a little bit fancy. You can calculate your target in a couple of methods. Now, I call these out because sometimes people will do what I have highlighted in red and they will sum the 50th percentile of salary, the 50th percentile of bonus, and the 50th percentile of equity and think, oh, that is going to equal the 50th percentile of total comp. And it will not do that. The reason is that not every company has those comp elements. And the way that a survey works, they're aggregating that data into each individual comp element. So people who do not have a bonus, they will be in the survey as salary or equity or just salary. People who have only salary and equity, they're also submitting, and maybe their total comp is the same as someone who has salary, bonus, and equity, but they're only splitting that total comp between the two pay elements of salary and equity, which means that they're inflating an element somewhere. So do not sum across. It will inflate your burn and spend. You need to be pulling out the targets and choosing what is it I want to target on. Now, I have said this very blanketly. I do want to call out for smaller companies. If you're using a survey such as Option Impact, you do not have a choice except for to target salary and equity because they have a total cash. They do not have total comp the way that a Radford or Mercer or larger survey would. But just because you're a small company does not mean you cannot purchase those surveys. So if you want to learn more there, feel free to reach out. We can walk you through. They do have adjusted pricing for smaller companies. Now, the other ways that I have shown you to calculate, just to get a little creative, I like backing out of a total comp target because generally that's what you're competing against. People aren't coming to you and saying, oh, this is just my base and this is just my bonus. They're going to say, I'm taking home X number of dollars a year, and that's what you want to lean into. Again, that might not work for small companies. I do have your calculation at the bottom there, but for everyone else, looking at total comp can be a great way to make sure that you're being competitive against the people in your market. And if you look at what your competitors are paying in total compensation, it's a great way to compare your offers and the other candidates to what is happening with your current pay philosophy. Once you have all of that work done, you've built this range, you have a low, a mid, a high, now is where you budget. And this is where you will change your philosophy or your stance based on the numbers should you need to. This is where the art of compensation starts to meet the science of what is actually going to happen when you go to your finance team. So what you need to look at is how many people at your company with these ranges you created are now in range. So I mean between the low to mid and low to high. Where do they fall? You need to check how much would it cost to move everyone who's outside of the range in range. Keep in mind that is only for people below. You are probably not going to lower the pay of people, but for anyone who are above the range, you do need to flag them because they're probably not going to get an increase for a while, or you probably have to ask the question, were they leveled correctly? Is there a performance thing happening here I need to digest? And that's where you'll loop in your business partners. Now, once you've looked at just those outliers, you do need to see how people compare to that midpoint. Generally, you do want most of your talent around the midpoint because that is what you've set as your target. That's where you're going to budget. So if most of your people are grouped at the high or the low of range, you have to ask yourself, did I choose the wrong percentile? Is this the wrong target that I need? It could be that you're paying people too lowly and you need to move them up, which you need to include in your budget because they might leave, or you're paying them too high and you have to talk about, well, are they going to get an increase for a while? The suggestion would probably be no from a comp professional, but that could create talent issues too. All of these things are going to go into your budget setting and they're going to send you back to the drawing board if you see, oh shoot, now that I've done all this comparison and work, I now realize that my employees need to be paid more or less, or that my targets need to be higher or lower, that is where you're going to iterate, change, and repeat the steps that we laid out above to make sure that you have the best possible compensation program. Now, if that seems like a lot, do not worry. Pequity can create ranges for you. We have an algorithmic system to build them in 6 weeks, as well as partners. If you want to partner with any of the data providers we've mentioned, all of them can operate from within our platform where you're able to track offers, create ranges, and manage your employee compensation. So get in touch.